On December 28th, 2021, I created my very first retrospective series, a retrospective on what is quite possibly my favorite game franchise of all time, Saints Row. I've been a longtime fan of the game since the very beginning, and even to this very day, I have stuck with this franchise through so many hoops and hurdles. We dealt with gangs, evil corporations, criminal empires, paramilitary groups, and even aliens and demons. I've played through all of these games and even gone out of my way to enjoy all of them. With some minor exceptions, of course. This ride wasn't a perfect ride, that's for sure, but it was a ride that I would thoroughly go through again at some point. In fact, I have done so many times over the past 10 to 15 years. I wanted to find a way to express my love and appreciation with the series through a video format, and I figured doing a retrospective on my favorite game franchise of all time would be the right way to do it. And while this was an idea I was thinking of doing over the past 5 years, the announcement of the reboot made me think to myself that now would be the right time to do it. The game is coming out in a year's time, so why not discuss all of the Saints Row games that were released beforehand? Well, little did I know that the game we got now was something we weren't expecting. A game that ended up becoming a big disaster even almost a year later. Ladies and gentlemen, saints and sinners, join me as we start all over again and enter the city of Santo Ileso, and we are introduced to the new Saints. Saints Row as a franchise is something that really means a lot to me. I know that might sound mopey as hell, but you have no idea how many days, months, or even years I have spent playing these games, whether I was depressed or angry or just wanted to have a good time. It was indeed a comfort game series. Hey, don't look at me like that. You're making it sound like it's not normal for someone to have a game series where you murder thousands of people as the perfect comfort game series. It's totally normal and not psychotic at all whatsoever. 9 years have passed since the release of Saints Row 4. Well, technically 7 years after Get Out of Hell, but people don't want to talk about that one. Saints Row would be in the doormat for almost a decade, with no updates on when we were getting a new game. But it wasn't a total loss, however. A few years prior, we got However, in August of 2021, prior to the premiere of that year's Gamescom, we were given this weird graffiti mural that said the word rebooting sprayed on a wall with the Saints logo attached to it, indicating that Saints Row is back and they're going to restart from scratch, possibly heading back to their roots. No more dildo bats, no more aliens, no more outer space and going to hell. The series was going in a more realistic and serious direction. Something everyone wanted for years and years to come, and the hype for it was extremely massive. Everyone was excited to see what this new Saints Row would become, all thanks to this mural, and it would constantly get updated as the days went on until the reveal at Gamescom. And then the game was officially announced.
Whenever you're ready, Kevin.
What are you guys thinking for dinner tonight?
How about my world famous chili con carne?
Oh, God. No. Oh, no.
Calling the reaction to this game as mixed would be very generous. Many people were not happy over this trailer, which, while understandable, did not favor anyone at all. Volition was getting constant backlash over it, and the fanbase was even more divided than ever, which is really saying something. Upon further reflection, the trailer itself was fine, I guess. Nothing groundbreaking. Hell, even Saints Row 3's announcement trailer was better than this, and all it was the boss punching a luchador in the dick. The overall response to this reboot was not for the faint of heart. Time to get personal, but it also doesn't help the fact that during the exact same day as the announcement of the reboot, Felicia was currently grieving over the loss of Idol Ninja. So combine that with the negative reaction of the game's announcement, and that week has been very rough for the company. The reaction to this game made me a bit worried. I was afraid that the game was going to fail to live up to the same expectations as the previous games, and instead ruin the entire legacy of this well-beloved series. But at the same time, my mind was thinking, I didn't want to believe any of those things. I was just happy about the fact that Saints Row was back after so many years of being absent for so long. Even if it did seem like a desperate attempt for Revolution to make bank again after the release of Agents of Mayhem, who said that? So of course, I was also excited for this one. Saints Row was back! It was time to sink in the moment. And with that sweet February 25th, August 23rd, 2022 release drawing near, the itch I had been scratching was finally about to end. The Boss Factory demo was released a couple of months prior, which I briefly talked about when I first played it, and I was a bit fooled by the marketing of the game, but again, the fanboy in me was completely taking over and I was very excited for the game. And then the game came out. Needless to say, my experience with the game was not good at all. You've seen the videos made by everyone else. So many people made reviews, rants, and jokes about how much of a disaster this game was. So what makes my video on it any different? Well, considering I made a promise that I would talk about this game as part of the retrospective, I really had no other choice. Now, as I was making this video, the game did receive a massive update. There were fixes to some of the performance issues and bugs, amongst other things like a general combat overhaul. And there will be more updates later down the road. But even then, I can't wait any longer. You all have waited almost a year, so now it's time I put my 2 cents on this game right now. The problem is though, where do I even begin? Should I start with the main story, or the gameplay? The map? The customization? The glitches? Oh god, the glitches. There are so many of these things to talk about, I don't even know where to start. Literally 4 out of the 5 things I mentioned ended up becoming a major disaster from the beginning, and it's hard to pinpoint where it starts and where it ends. You know what? I'm just gonna go with the flow. Wait until the right time for me to discuss what it is I want to talk about, and then move on from there. There will also be tons of spoilers ahead for not only this game, but other games in the series as well. I also don't know how long this video will be, but just to be safe, grab a bag of popcorn, chips, or Swedish fish, and watch me indulge into the madhouse that is Saints Row 2022. In a Saints Row game, an opening cutscene can convey what exactly you're going to see. Saints Row 1 opens up with a gang war breaking out while you happen to be in the crossfire of it and being recruited into the Saints. Saints Row 2 opens up with a jailbreak and reforming the Saints while getting a glimpse of the new gangs you're going to fight. Saints Row 3 opens up with a more bombastic action movie approach, robbing a bank, skydiving, and using a UAV drone, but also bringing the Saints to a new city and learning more about this crime syndicate called the Syndicate. And Saints Row 4? Well, it opens up with USABA Guterres attack, you becoming the President of the United States and encountering an alien invasion. It's all straightforward, all of them goes from point A to point B. Tries to get it over with so the players can go ahead and have some fun in the open world. Heck, in Saints Row 1, you're just dropped into the open world and you're free to do whatever you want. You don't even have to do the first mission if you like. So in Saints Row 2022, it opens up with these Saints already being reformed and throwing a massive party. Hey, does anyone have that closing credits joke that everyone else has made? I mean, I can't find mine, and I don't know where it is. This man goes by the name of Antonio Espina, who is planning on making a deal with the Saints. Will this go anywhere at all later on in the game, perhaps? Who knows? But we don't have time to talk about that. We got a party to throw and some new Saints to recruit. So we make this TikTok-inspired video sending a message to all the gangs in the game. Los Panteros, Marshall, and the Idols.
Oh, Muppets on Facebook thinking you're bad, mate. I'll line every last one of your birds if I'm bombing one by one. Fucking bear, what most?
But either the service is terrible or the boss dropped their phone because we see it laying on the ground getting a terrible connection and blood covered on it. Then the boss collapses on the dirt and starts being dragged into a grave and gets buried alive in the graveyard. We also see a montage of our friends and all of our wonderful times we've had with them. Even though this is only the beginning of the game, but hey, suspense or something, it is what it is. But at least this is showing that one of our friends will betray us at the end of the game, right? Well, if you think I'm going to give this game enough credit later on, then you're surely going to be mistaken. We cut a few months earlier, in case you couldn't tell because they had to remind us twice, and we see the orientation video for Marshall Defense Industries, a private militia group formed by Atticus Marshall, who teaches us the ways of working for a paramilitary group, keeping the city a safer place with a little TLC. tables, ladders, and chairs. We get introduced to Gwen, our superior, who chastises us for watching the video, and we do get a little bit snippy with her by talking smack a bit. 2 wrestling references in a short amount of time, that's good. She gives us a briefing that we need to capture the Nawali and bring him to the frontier. Who is the Nawali and what did he do? I don't know, he does bad things. That's all we got from this. No explanation, no context, nothing of sort to give us at least a little bit of storytelling or character development. We march on foot to the location and watch all of our comrades just get wrecked so hard the split second we step out. This is also where we get introduced to the combat of the game. This was one of the many complaints people had with the game at launch, including myself. Whether it's because of the aiming itself, the auto-aim assist, or how combat itself was designed, the combat in the game is quite possibly the worst in the entire series, as it played more like a traditional GTA game, but a lot more refined. Saints Row 3 and 4's combat was also fine enough as it is. It may be a bit more snappier than the previous games, but it was still enjoyable and worked nonetheless. So I have no idea what happened here. Volition did release a huge combat overhaul this year, and while it still has some issues, it definitely feels much better now than it did back then. Aiming has improved greatly. Back at launch, aiming was very sensitive and it was difficult for you to even aim at the enemy without using the auto-aim feature. The aiming after the update is much better now. It doesn't feel like you're playing a Wii game with bad motion controls anymore. It actually feels perfectly fine, even though the game still encourages you to auto-aim. Enemies aren't bullet spongy anymore, or at least that's what the devs said, but I don't know, they still feel kind of bullet spongy to me a bit. Not as bad as before, but the fact that they still have shielded enemies, which makes these fights drag on even further, is still tedious, especially since they still give these shields to basic enemies. I can understand giving it to specialists, but no reason why they need to give it to basic ass enemies as well. Also, even though it's not that big of a deal, but they also got rid of health bars for enemies, but not for vehicles though. I have no idea why. There's also hand-to-hand combat, which you'll be doing very less of. Although you barely do hand-to-hand combat in the past games, there is literally no point in doing them in this game, since even fighting enemies with your bare fists is almost as bad as shooting them, if not worse. Enemies do not stagger when you hit them, and they dodge out of the way almost half of the time, making it impossible for you to hit them. It's like being in a boxing match, but you're completely blindfolded. And against shielded enemies too. It makes the fights drag on even more than it needs to be. You probably already noticed this big, obnoxious prompt that is located down on the bottom here. That is the prompt to perform takedowns. You have to wait a specific amount of time or kill enough enemies for the meter to go up, and then once it's at 100%, you can freely perform a takedown. Well, I say freely, but it's more of a requirement. Like doing a summer reading project for school. And I say that because performing takedowns is the only way for you to regain your health. Yep, you still cannot eat fast food to regain your health like in 1 or 2, or hell, you can even just hide behind a wall and take cover to watch your health regenerate. Yeah, it's an overused mechanic, but it still worked regardless. Even after the update, this is still the only way to regain your health until it is full. Health bars are no longer just one big circle bar, but rather split up into 3 separate chunks that do get upgraded the more you play the game. And it's because of this is why takedowns are the only way to regenerate your health. It's like they took these takedowns from Doom and just made it worse. I don't have a problem with games that try to borrow elements from other games, don't get me wrong. I played Hi-Fi Rush not too long ago, and that game borrowed elements from other games like Sunset Overdrive, Guitar Hero, Devil May Cry, and Jet Set Radio. But it takes its own spin on things to make it feel more refreshed and refined, adding in that factor of making the game fun. In contrast to SR 2022, it's the exact opposite. It's not fun, it's just stupid and adds nothing to the game at all besides just trying to mimic something that worked so well in another game, but doesn't work here, making this entirely useless feature even more useless. You could have given the option to bring back consuming food like in the old games. I mean, hell, you already have Freckle Bitches back, so it's not like you couldn't implement that feature. And yes, I know it's called FBs and not Freckle Bitches, but, you know, it's still the same thing because it's just a short abbreviated version of it. Like how Rim Jobs is now called Gym Robs instead, but again, they just swap the letters because, you know, they think it's funny. It has nothing to do with the game being woke or anything. I don't focus on that kind of crap. The takedowns themselves are so lame to look at, and especially due to how out of place some of them are. I got to give Volition some credit though. The fact they went out of their way to make so many of these takedown animations takes some dedication. But then again, they knew that takedowns would be the only way to regain health, so of course they're gonna try their damned hardest to make them look as cool as possible to avoid all the criticism this would get. But even then, some of the animations are just downright stupid. Like a twisted headbutt, stabbing a dude in the face before pulling the trigger, or quite possibly the lamest takedown ever Forgetting to reload your gun. That doesn't make you look cool, that makes you look like a Beck song. And while we're on the topic of lame and dorky decisions, the game also allows us to use special abilities. Stuff like using a device to shoot through walls, which easily breaks the game, calling in Saints reinforcements, launching enemies into the air, or my personal favorite, throwing a grenade. No, I'm not kidding. Throwing a grenade is now a special ability. Which is weird since you can pretty much use throwables in the game like C4 explosives. Heck, they even brought them back to having their own slot in the weapon wheel like in Saints Row 1 and 2. I never used any of these abilities besides the grenades, including the one where you shove it down someone's pants, which not only do you get very early on in the game, but you can also use this as a great strategy to get rid of enemy shields in the process. You still have to be able to gain this thing called flow though to use them, but you get them rather quickly, so you'll be spamming these abilities a lot. I don't know how to describe it perfectly, but I sort of imagine it as a mixture of Saints Row III and Agents of Mayhem's combat, though completely toned down and a little bit more sensitive with the combat itself. We fight our way through the Nawali's men, get separated from our crew, and even get scolded by Gwen a couple of more times for not following her orders. I like Gwen. She's the only character in this game that doesn't come off as annoying or makes me want to rip my hair out. After catching the Nawali, he begins to run away from the saloon. We get chased, but he ends up trying to fly away with a VTOL. Gwen orders us to stand down, but we disobey her and go after the Nawali by ourselves. We get our asses kicked, but still manage to capture him. Back in the locker room, Gwen scolds us for not listening to her orders and screws us over for getting a performance bonus, followed by her saying the lines, "Fall in line," or "Find a new job." This is the part where the game tries to set up the whole "you got screwed over by the upper class management" crap that the game is trying to convey, but it fails on multiple levels. For starters, I relate heavily to Gwen in this scenario. She isn't trying to screw you over or bring you down or anything. No, she's just trying to make sure you're doing your job and survive. But with you sabotaging her plans, it sort of makes you look more like the bad guy than the person in the game is trying to make look like the bad guy. After the scolding, oh god no, not this scene.
God damn. Shitballs on a stick with a side order, a mother-loving shit-smothered, piss-covered ass. Shut the fuck up, idiot!
We start receiving messages from our friends congratulating us on our new job and how we should celebrate. And from there, we get our very first cutscene with them. I don't need to explain this. You've seen the complaints people have made about this cutscene alone. You already know this does not match the entire tone of the series, and you already know this is set up like an ABC sitcom, so I'm not even going to bother posting like a network logo on the screen because everyone else has already made that joke. The writing, the dialogue, the tone, almost everything about this cutscene alone is enough proof of how tone-deaf the whole entire game is. We talk about having to pay our student loans and paying rent while getting screwed over by losing your performance bonus. So the only other option we have is to rob a payday loan place. We grab our guns, rob the place, and make our escape, but running into a couple of hurdles. The first one being the police catching us in the act as we try to drive away from them. This is where the game gets introduced to sideswiping, a new feature where all you have to do is just press the X button and just swipe left or right. It works with cars, trucks, and motorcycles. Trust me, you'll be doing this a lot, but I'll get to that later. Driving as a whole is a very mixed bag for me. On one hand, it mostly plays similarly to Agents of Mayhem, which I didn't really mind, but I did wish there was less emphasis on driving around tight corners all the time. However, there is one thing that truly holds it back. Well, besides the scripted combat sequences. The physics in this game is the most off-putting physics engine I think I've ever played in any video game. Even something as small as a go-kart is like driving an unstoppable tank. Crashing into someone else's car, and it launches itself into oblivion. I know that it's trying to replicate the old physics of Saints Row 2 and 3, but even then, there is an ounce of realism when it comes between driving vehicles. Cars didn't just launch into the sky out of nowhere. No! It was pedestrians. Now that was funny. We escape from the cops and make it to our switch car, but it gets destroyed by the Panteros. This is also the point where we get the ability to shove a grenade down someone's pants, by the way. We kill the Panteros, but reports are coming in that the cops are swarming to where the shootout happened. You grab some dirt bikes and escape from the cops again, this time without scripted takedown events. As we get caught, however, Nina pulls a stunt like this. We escape, and after that big debacle, the boss decides that maybe they should go back doing some side hustles to make some extra cash. Side hustles are pretty much this game's version of activities. There's a total of 5 of them: shoplifting, Pony Express, Atcha, riding shotgun, and wingsuit saboteur. To put it short, these are pretty mixed in my opinion. I'm going to be talking about these in the order from my favorite to least favorite. Pony Express. Pony Express focuses on driving, delivering a package from one area to another. Despite my opinion on how driving works in the game, this might be my favorite side hustle in the game. It gives you many options on how you want to approach your route and delivery. Do you want to take the sneak away, avoiding the cops and making the drop off in one piece? Or take them head on, adding tension to the delivery? It's engaging, even if the driving does sour the experience a little bit. Riding shotgun is sort of like a spiritual successor to drug trafficking, minus the, well, drug trafficking. But the concept is still the same. You're protecting the driver from cops and gangs while you and the driver attempt to escape. This is also where we get a change in car combat. As the passenger, you can only pick between small weapons like pistols and SMGs. But a new feature is riding on the roof, using shotguns, assault rifles, and rocket launchers. Riding on the roof allows you to use more weapons but makes you easily vulnerable, losing your health very quickly. Hiding in your car can regenerate your health, but much like riding on the roof, you'll lose your car's health unless you kill an enemy, which would lead to regenerating it. While a bit more basic, it is still a nail-biting hustle. Only the aiming was refined. Atcha, there's not a lot to say about it. All you do is leave a bad review on one of the stores and just defeat a wave of enemies. One interesting thing is the lower the rating is, the harder the wave gets. I also do think the mini reviews are a nice interesting touch. Besides that, it's just kill a bunch of enemies and survive. Nothing else to say. Wingsuit Saboteur, the only side hustle to ever utilize the wingsuit. Well, before the May update anyway. The worst part is that you'll more than likely be on foot than being in the air. Fly into a rooftop, kill security officers, and blow up satellite dishes. Do this for as many times as the game lets you, and then you're done. It's boring and tedious, and completely underutilizes the wingsuit. Shoplifting is the worst side hustle in the entire game, and there is one reason why: the flying controls. I pointed out many issues with driving cars, but at least driving in itself sort of handles well. Flying helicopters, on the other hand, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I'd rather fly a helicopter in GTA 5 than in this game. That's how bad it is. The objective for shoplifting is to steal a container full of money or antiques, but when you magnetize the container, the controls start to struggle with you. For starters, the container loves to flail around, which results in you crashing and burning your helicopter. This doesn't just apply to the side hustle too. There are some main missions that require you to fly a helicopter to magnetize cars, but with the containers, it makes flying impossible since the physics just bounces you all over the place. Overall, some of the side hustles themselves are a hit and miss. Some of them are fun, some of them are and ones that are just boring or downright annoying. To be fair, some of the activities in the past games were a hit and miss as well, but at least they were mostly fun. Hell, even my least favorite activities are still pretty damn good to play. And we haven't even gone into the criminal ventures yet. My god, I have some things to say about them soon. After we do some side hustling, we get a call from Gwen, who assigns us with a new job and driver. She wants us to follow a convoy truck driven by the Panteros that's full of antiquities, something that the Nawali was supposed to receive before we captured him. Now all Gwen wants us to do is to observe and report, like the mission name says, and not to engage with them. This is also where we get introduced to good old JR. Oh wait, I'm sorry, I'm referring to the good JR, the wrestling commentator Jim Ross.
It's Wednesday night, and you know what that means!
I mean this JR, the bad one. You're a driver for the mission. Things start to get haywire when the Panteros start shooting, which results in you engaging into combat. We eventually hijack the truck, take out the driver, and retrieve the artifact. Gwen congratulates us, but it's not all sunshines and rainbows as we get a text from Nino who's pissed at us for sabotaging the convoy. You'd figured that because of the boss trying their best to get paid and to pay their rent and student loans, you know, the main motivation for even following orders and to getting that bonus anyway, which is what the characters themselves said in the mission before, then Nino would be a bit more understanding about this. Not that it matters, because like with everything else in the game, this leads to nowhere. We meet Atticus Marshall and Antonio Espina, the man who tried to offer us a deal at the beginning of the game. Atticus was so impressed by our skills, he decided to promote us to Chief of Security during the unveiling of the Hummingbird Codex. Oh yeah, that was the thing that was in the convoy, by the way. Forgot to mention that. And the game will forget about it soon too, don't worry. Before that though, we meet up with JR, who's building his own garage named Jim Rob's. But some of the parts he needed was stolen by the idols and he needs to steal it back. Kevin finds it weird that the idols would steal from the literal guys, but he encourages you to be nice to them since they're like family to him. That doesn't last though because he starts shooting them and Kevin is mad at you.
To be nice to them. I was. They were shitheads. Well, now they want you dead. They're headed your way. Thanks for the heads up.
After we defeat 2 waves of idols, we are introduced to this game's interpretation of Chop Chop. Jim wants us to steal a specific car and bring it to him in one piece. Do that 10 more times and boom, you're done. This is just a preview of what's to come with the venture mechanic as we progress through the game. For now, we gotta go to the museum for the unveiling of the Hummingbird Codex. Everything goes nice and quiet. Atticus introduces us to Myra Starr, the board of director at Marshall, and tells us it's time to celebrate and we should grab a drink. However, the celebration is short-lived as Nina calls us to inform that the Pateros are going to sabotage the unraveling and steal the Codex back. It's kind of funny that Nina gets mad at us for sabotaging the Pateros' plan, when yet she's the one who's also feeding us information about them. Like, am I the only one that's kind of bothered by that? Am I missing something about this? We fight our way through the Panteros before we get interrupted by the idols, the gang we took out earlier and were stealing parts from JR. And we are also introduced to the Collective, a group of con men who controlled the small fries of the idols just for their own personal sake. And now this is where I talk about the gangs. To be blunt, I am not a big fan of all of them. The Panteros are just wasted potential. A gang that could have served as an excellent final gang in the game, especially with what follows as the game goes on, but sadly doesn't get enough time to shine. The idols just show up and do absolutely nothing for almost the entire game. The Collective just manipulates the goons for their own personal gain. Everyone, including Kevin himself, are being tools by the Collective. Remember that whole shirtless thing that everyone always points out whenever people mock Kevin? Well, there is a reason behind it. It's because of the fact that it's an iconic look for the idols themselves. And since Kevin is a part of the idols, that means he's going shirtless. He still remains shirtless even after he leaves the idols, but I guess that would require character development. Marshall is the only gang in this game that ends up getting the most attention. And that is something that I would have to go into more detail later, as Marshall is also nothing more than a wasted opportunity for a gang, and even for one of your lieutenants. But long story short, I'm not a big fan of these gangs. I know there hasn't been a Saints Row game since the second one that really handled enemy gangs all that well, especially 4 and Get Out of Hell, because, you know, there are no gangs. But this game does this marginally worse. We shoot our way through the museum and save the Codex, but get trapped and we lose it. Along the way, we meet Myra Starr again and saves her from the shootout, but at the cost of losing the Codex. Atticus gets mad at us like J. Jonah Jameson getting mad at Spider-Man, literally because they have the same voice actor, and for wasting time saving Myra, resulting in us getting fired. We then later get a voice message from Kevin telling us about the idols, but it was too little too late. Literally, you could have called us about that, Kevin, for real. This leads to this scene.
Hey, it's Kevin. I made you breakfast if you want some. That's cool if you don't. Nina wasn't hungry either. I'm sorry about last night.
I don't need to explain why this segment is bad, but I will anyway. The boss and Nina start their self-pity over the failure at the museum. You're soaking in bed and Nina's bitching about how the Panteros aren't the same when Sergio took over. For revenge, the Panteros plan on shooting up the idols party that Kevin even had the balls to invite you and Nina to, despite what happened. Hey, sorry my gang got you fired and your leader of your gang pissed, but do you want to join the party my gang is hosting instead? It seems like a bit of a slap in the face, not gonna lie. Eli joins Kevin at the party, but he ends up getting shot, and now you and Nina have to drive there to save both him and Kevin. Nina calls Sergio to call the whole thing off, but Sergio won't budge and Nina ends up quitting the gang because of it. As you two make it to the party, the Collective comes in about to shoot you two, and Kevin interferes, preventing the idols from killing his friends. To compensate with this, Kevin is given a choice between killing his friends or leaving the idols. Kevin misses, or at least that's what I think he did anyway. I don't know. I guess even your friends are dealing with bad aiming as well. And the whole shootout begins. You kill one of the Collectives and about to drive back home. That is before we get a little motivational speech from Roger McGillicuddy, with the tagline being, "Be your own boss." See, I would actually enjoy this bit if it wasn't for the fact that the explosions are so loud, making it impossible to hear what exactly he's saying. You make it home, and after that motivational speech, you decided it's time to be your own boss and form your very own criminal empire. Kevin, Nina, and Eli are on board with the idea. Oh, and their cat Snickerdoodle. Wait, what? And from there, you start planning your own game. You need a location, a name, and a logo. Sounds complicated for sure. Probably will take some time to find.
I got it.
Oh, okay. Much like the original Saints, it's a church located on 3rd Street. As you make it there seems to be a construction crew about to destroy the church, but you put a stop to it by destroying the site. You even get to bully the man who owns the property named Lan, and that name perfectly fits his personality. I mean, he still doesn't deserve to be bullied though, that's for sure. He gives us the deed and even his entire briefcase. Oh, and even his car, but you just take the car because, again, you're an asshole for no reason? Why? Kevin shares this online, which leads to the idols invading. Once you take them out, you finally form the new 3rd Street Saints. The church and the logo perfectly captivates the imagery of what the Saints represented. Originally a gang that, while not entirely wholesome, still managed to redeem the streets of Stillwater from gang warfare. That's how the Saints originally were back then. Julius formed the Saints as a way to stop gang violence. True, it would backfire when he hired the playa, but the meaning of the Saints is both used as an ironic but also unironic form of representation. Ironic because the Saints aren't actually saints at all since they're also doing illegal things, but also in an unironic way as well because they're still doing this for a good cause, even if it does mean they have to do bad deeds. Here though, it just feels like everything was just a convenience. Hey, we got a location, which is an abandoned church. Hey, we got a logo, which is the fleur-de-lis laying on the floor underneath plywood. Why not call ourselves the Saints? I normally hate having to say this, as I do think saying this comes off as condescending a little bit, but it almost feels sort of lazy, hollow, and unimaginative. Almost like they had to rush through this as much as they could. And we're only 4 hours into the game. A game that only takes 12 hours just to beat the main campaign. And it only gets worse from here. So now the new Saints are formed. We found our location, our logo, and even our name. So what's the first thing we do to remind everyone that there is a new gang in town? Do we cherry pick each gang one by one like in the old games? Bring our options to choose which gangs we should take out first? Also have our lieutenants be put in charge of taking out said gangs in their respective order? Or you can help Kevin go to FB's to get a Kids Meal toy? Or Nina asking you to collect art pieces? Or Eli with, wait, no. I'm saving that for later. Rather than going by gang arcs, instead each mission goes by character with their own missions. Now, as much as it pains me to admit this, I wouldn't mind these character arc missions if they were, at the very least, related to the story itself, like having Kevin helping us take out the idols, questioning their beliefs and trying to convince people that the idols are a bunch of lying cultist conmen, only doing this for their own personal gain. Nino would try to stop Sergio from ruining the Panteros, and Eli could even help you take out Marshall, or at the very least take out other big-name businesses, so the Saints can easily make a name for themselves. But we don't get that. Kevin's arc is just him trying to do something like getting a kid's toy, or going to watch TV with the boss, but before he gets into a scuffle with the idols. And Eli just diddle-daddles trying to learn how to shoot a gun, and doing this LARPing shit that I hate. I can't believe that in a game series that gave us a giant purple dildo bat, VTOLs, zombies, aliens, presidency, superpowers, a giant soda can, going to hell, shooting Satan in the face, and even a goddamn Disney-inspired musical number, this was the point where I said, this is not Saints Row. And yes, the LARPing stuff doesn't add anything at all to the main story. No, at least that's what I thought anyways. Remember Gwen? You know, the hard ass the game wanted you to portray to you as this awful higher up who mistreated you, when in reality she was only making sure her comrades don't die and you just ended up looking like an idiot? Yeah, she's in this arc. Pretty much everyone in the entire town participates in this event called the Dust Moot, and we join Eli on his quest to join one of the houses to take down Gwen. I should have called this game Saints Row with 3 houses. This entire arc lasts over an hour, and the only reason why is because this is the only arc in the game that heavily utilizes the Criminal Ventures feature for the main story. And while we're on the topic of the Criminal Ventures themselves, we might as well get to them. The Ventures, much like side hustles, are a variety of mixed bag of side content. There's a total of 14 ventures, which sounds interesting. 14 different approaches to these ventures means more variety, right? Come on, dude. Do you see what game we're playing? Almost half of these are just nothing but deliveries. I already talked about Chop Shop, but then you get stuff like Food Truck Delivery, which has you stealing food trucks and fighting enemies, Waste Disposal, which has you delivering toxic waste. If you're able to get all 12 barrels in one sitting, then you could be able to get more money out of it. But once you crash into something, the cans explode and you have to haul ass and make it by the drop-off point. There's also no one chasing you, no police, no enemy gangs, not even casual enemies. Towing, which was a diversion in Saints Row 2, has you towing vehicles, of course. Laundromat, which is sort of like Pony Express, you have to drive around with a dead body in the trunk and make sure you get to the drop-off point in one piece, and to make it look like an accident. And Planet Saints has you looking for trucks to bring to the store, and that's it. Well, at least for half of the ventures, all they are is just driving from point A to point B. No variety, nothing to make them stand out, just drive. We also do have some ventures that do bring back some old activities of the past games. Shady Oaks is insurance fraud, which is relatively worse here. The physics feel so floaty and you can cheese this easily. Cars explode when you have adrenaline, and there are plenty of parked cars everywhere. Assuming your game didn't glitch anyway. Mayhem is, well, mayhem. Just cause destruction and make money. It's simplistic, which is to be expected, but due to how chaotic the game can already get, with being heavily reliant on explosions, it tends to lose its charm a bit. As for the new stuff, we have First Strike Dojo, which relies on the awful hand-to-hand combat I mentioned earlier. Let's Pretend has you robbing stores. Oh wait, hang on. You don't actually rob stores in the game. No. Instead, you're the getaway driver while all of your crewmates rob houses, boats, and even banks. They're doing all the fun shit while you're just dicking around on your phone waiting for them to come out, and you have to escape with them. Eureka Baiter has you experimenting with martial tech. This is the shortest for obvious reasons, and I am very grateful for that. You get a football that acts like a rocket when you throw it at people, riding on a hoverboard, which is so clunky, it's almost like playing Tony Hawk Ride, and a new ability where you can set up the Quantum Aperture, a portable wall you can use to shoot enemies that are hiding behind walls. And this shit breaks the combat, if not the entire game, easily, as you can just cheese your way through enemies with this. And due to how much flow you have and how much you can be able to gain and back quickly, you can easily use this again to your heart's content. There's also Cutting Edge, which gives you these special textures for customization, which looks very ugly. Again, I'll get into more detail later when we get to the actual customization. And lastly, Cactus Radio. It doesn't give you a new radio station, but it is easily the worst criminal venture that doesn't require driving from point A to point B in the entire game. Survive a wave of enemies while they call in for backup, and when you survive, you destroy the radio towers to slow down the process of the call-ins. Which, you know what? I'm surprised no one has ever talked about these call-ins a lot, and it upsets me because it is the most broken thing in the entire game. Notoriety works similarly in the past games. Cause enough commotion and you'll get either a gang or police officers after you. Maybe both. However, the way that they were handled felt differently then. Normally, if you get a 1-star notoriety, nothing happens. But the more chaos and destruction you cause, the higher the notoriety gets, and the tougher the enemies are. But there is a pattern to this. 1 star means nothing big happens and it fades away quickly. If you get 2 or 3 stars, you'll get some cars coming after you, and also some tougher enemies. But it's nothing you can't handle. But when you get a 4 or 5 star wanted level, then it is a madhouse. It balances between how many stars you got, making it feel fairly simple. Some missions will give you a 5-star notoriety instantly, adding in on that difficulty factor. In SR 2022, even a 1-star notoriety is enough for an entire police force or gangs to come out and get you because of these call-ins. Look how many police officers are being called in, and look how much notoriety I have. And you don't even have enough time to stop them either. Cactus is supposed to slow down the call-ins, giving you more time to stop them, but even then, I still can't stop the call-ins on time because they're already finished before I even notice they appeared on my screen. I could just simply drive away, but the game is so reliant on car chases. They would even have cars that are very far behind from me teleport right behind me like a damn slasher villain. Now, the May update did improve on this a little bit. The call-ins are much easier now to stop if you notice it, and it's slower a little bit, giving you enough time to stop them before it's finished. But it still has the issue of occurring constantly, and enemies can still swarm you even if you have a 1-star notoriety. Thankfully though, it is now a little bit easier to escape from that, which is definitely better than how it was before. Anyways, back to the LARPing stuff. You do the venture where you survive a wave of enemies with the awful combat, which is now even worse since skills are removed and you have very little weapons. Get Nina and Kevin to join in, defeat the houses, and claim the crown. There are some No, okay, maybe that's being too nice. Maybe it's just one silly moment where you drive a car that has a monster on the roof to kill people, which is kind of cool. But mostly everything else about this LARPing arc seriously does not add anything at all to the story, besides butchering a character that shouldn't even need to be butchered anyway. The fact that the devs went so far out of the way to make this so in-depth compared to anything else in the entire game is baffling to me. This got more attention to detail than you, your gang, the other 3 gangs, the ventures, the city, the gameplay, the audio design, the glitches, and even every other mission in the entire game. It's that bad. But now we're done. We can get back to business. We start recruiting members by participating in a live stream battle royale and learn how exactly we can pay the crew. Nina suggests a train heist that the Panteros were planning, but to do that the boss offers some extra muscle. So the best course of action would be to break the Nawali out of the frontier. After some clever stealth, we tell Nawali about the job and he joins in. But before we do that though, we do this.
Team building. What?
Look, you don't know us, we don't know you, but we're putting our lives in each other's hands, so we need to be on the same page. Eli threw out the idea that we should spend a day doing some team-building exercises. You know, so we can really get a sense of camaraderie.
We have hats.
I thought we agreed to use the fleur.
This is better.
I'm with Nina.
I have so many questions.
And that, my friend, is what team building is all about.
A day where we don't kill anyone and just have a fun, exciting, sunny side-up summer day. This game hates me. But uh-oh, the Panteros, Idols, and Marshall are ruining our fun, so now our day is ruined. But don't worry, everyone had a good time at the end of the day, and like before, this added nothing to the story. I mean, the Nawali ends up being one of the gang, and he is excited about the train heist. To compensate for this, you give him a knife. One thing that I find absolutely funny about this cutscene is not the fact that you give the Nawali a knife that will totally not be a major plot twist near the end of the game, and I don't care if I'm spoiling it, Volition technically did it first, but how Kev and Nina just stand there and do nothing. They don't partake in the conversation, they don't give the Nawali a congratulations when he's given a present. Hell, they don't even sit on the hover bikes. They just stand there like generic NPCs in the background. This isn't actually a problem or critique or anything, I just find that funny. You make your way to the train, but lose connection to the Nawali. As you make it through the train, however, the Panteros come to interfere with the plan, and Sergio himself comes down before getting killed by the Nawali. Now, if this was done properly, this would have been a clever twist. The Nawali killing Sergio would be a nice surprise, if we got more insight on Sergio anyway, and then the twist would have worked. But then again, do you not remember the game we're playing right now? Prior to this mission, we only get to see Sergio roughly twice throughout the entire game, where you steal the Panteros' convoy and shoot his truck, and the next when he destroys Nina's car. I didn't bring this up earlier, but one of Nina's arc is how she's exacting revenge on Sergio for destroying her car. That car was from her late mother who died of cancer, and she gave it to Nina to drive it from Guadalajara. She exacted revenge by taking out the forge. She also forgot that the Panteros were using the forge for that heist. Wow, you are an idiot, Nina. You're even more of an idiot than Shandi.
Hey!
She gets her revenge, but we don't get any reaction from Sergio about that at all. No cutscene, no call, hell, not even exposition from Nina. Literally nothing. In Saints Row 1, Saints Row 2, and hell, even in Saints Row the 3rd, we got some context on how the rival gang leaders reacted over something the Saints did. It gave them character, it gave them growth. It showed proof that these were more than just big mean gang leaders. They were still human, and in this game, we get none of this. Well, maybe besides Atticus, kind of, but that's it. There is no depth to these villains. Any one of them for that matter. Sergio only shows up for a couple of scenes. The Collective are nothing more than side bosses, and even then, that's putting it lightly. And the Nawali, well, we'll get to him later. Speaking of which, after Nawali kills Sergio, he and the boss progress further on the train. You lose to Nawali again, but we do get this pretty cool moment where you're inside a tank and start blowing stuff up. The train gets destroyed and you almost fall face first in the sand, but the Nawali catches you and you get the money. We even have a money fight. Might as well see how our crew is holding up. They managed to take out an armored truck and stole the money, which is cool. Really wish they would have got a better fashion sense though. Oh, but the police task force has information on this. So really, the whole side story is to make sure that the task force leaves us alone. I know it sounds like I'm trying to get this over with as fast as possible just to get this video over and done with. And you're right, this video has dragged on for this long. Also, at the same time, there's really nothing interesting to talk about in this story. In case if you couldn't tell. Since I already brought up the terrible fashion sense though, I might as well talk about the customization. I will say that during the Boss Factory demo, I thought it was the most fluid customization in the entire series. I might have given them a bit more credit than Nintendo did. Don't get me wrong, I do think it's the best aspect of the game. There are a bit more features compared to the past couple of games, but still not as much compared to 1 and 2. They brought back layered clothing, sure, but you still can choose to wear a jacket open or closed. I do like the idea of having asymmetric body parts, like having 2 different eye sizes and other body parts. That's cool. Weapon customization is very disappointing. True, we can mix colors and change the pattern designs, but we can't choose attachment for guns like changing sights or getting rid of that ugly foregrip for shotguns and assault rifles. Seriously, these look bad. And upgrading weapons is a joke. Unlike in Saints Row 4, where you can buy upgrades like extra damage, rate of fire, and recoil, instead it harkens back to Saints Row III's weapons upgrades where you can just upgrade a weapon by its level. Heck, even Saints Row III, despite having this same feature, at least changes the appearance of the weapons and the attributes. If we couldn't get the option to add attachments, why not give us new attachments when we upgrade our weapons, you know? I feel like the weapon customization is the biggest disappointment for me. It's much more than just picking your favorite color or pattern design. I don't know if it was for time constraints or not, but I do wish they'll implement weapon attachments either in the next game or a future update. Vehicle customization though, mwah! Wonderful. Absolutely beautiful. I love it. It is much better than any other Saints Row game out there. It's detailed, you have more parts to work with, and you can customize helicopters, VTOLs, and boats too, which rocks. This might be the best vehicle customization in the entire series in my opinion. Next to Saints Row 2 anyway. Love taking my beautiful cars outside for a joyride. See, I can actually compliment the game. It's just that it's very rare for me to do that. Speaking of the outside, I might as well also get my thoughts on the city itself out of the way too. Santo Ileso, much like with everything else in the game, it has potential, but could have been adapted much more. I do think the city is a huge step up from Steelport back in Saints Row 3 and 4, but it doesn't come close to being as good as Stillwater in Saints Row 2. I do like how more vibrant and colorful the city is. As bad as the graphics are in the game, I do think in terms of design, the city itself looks vibrant, having a Las Vegas inspired theme to it. The desert area also looks really cool, but it's a desert, so of course there's not a lot to see. There are some decent landmarks if you're in the desert and some clever Easter eggs too. Alas, the city itself just doesn't have that much life to it. True, it has more life than Steelport, but that's like saying the sales for this game is better than the sales for Agents of Mayhem. That was so mean. I'm so sorry about that. All we see is pets just doing the same thing like waving nightsticks or lighting off fireworks. And you'll see those a lot too. And we can't go inside casinos in a game that is heavily based on Las Vegas, or hell, you can't even go into any building in general. The fact we can't go inside casinos to play games is insulting to say the least. Hell, Saints Row 2, a game released in 2008, was able to do this perfectly. I feel like having many clothing stores kind of got in the way of that, since there's even more clothing stores here than there are gym robs. I know JR is just a single car shop, but come on, man. Also, no image has design, which means we can't simply drive there to customize our character. Instead, we can just freely choose to customize them on the fly with the new Styles app. It might be more handy and convenient, but it also takes away the exploration of driving around the city and soaking in the beautiful landscapes. And no, having so many clothing stores doesn't count either. Okay, so after the train heist, we're back on track with the story. What's next? How can the Saints make a bigger name for themselves than how they already are? Well, since the Nawali pretty much hijacked our claim to fame, Kevin suggests the ideal for stealing the Hummingbird Codex. Yeah, the Codex back from the museum mission that was supposed to be guarded by you. Yeah, it's relevant again. The Idols have it on their yacht under protection, and Kevin says that stealing it would easily make the Saints a household name. Quick question though. What does the Codex do? Is it some device that we can use to gather information? Is it a dangerous object that can single-handedly destroy the world? Does it have Grubhub on it? I don't know, and the game doesn't know either. Unless it does know and it doesn't want to tell us. We go to the yacht, kill more idols along the way, and reach the Codex. But it turns out that it was a fake and we need to disarm the bomb. The collective even pops up on the screen to laugh at our faces, but I'm the one with the bomb defusing skills, so this plan of yours just sucks, man. We escape shooting more idols to get the real Codex, but we have to defuse this bomb again. Yay, repetition, I love it. So we pay them back by blowing up the yacht. We make our way while Party Up by DMX plays in the background. This is something not a lot of people talk about as well, but the music as a whole plays an important part in not only Saints Row, but any open world game. There are games that utilize action set pieces with licensed music. Whether it fits the tone of the game or not is opinionated, and I feel like the soundtrack to this game might be the second best thing about it. That doesn't mean it's good though. The game has a total of 10 radio stations, although I could have sworn Volition promises 12. I thought the Cactus radio venture would give us a new radio station, but unfortunately that didn't seem to be the case. Unless if there is something that I missed, I would have to assume that these 2 stations that were playing were cut from the final release. Regardless, the soundtrack is a mixed bag for me. Out of all the radio stations in the game, only 2 of them I listen to the most. Nuclear Blast and The Cypher. NB because it's metal music and I frickin' love metal! And The Cypher because not only is it the most throwback we'll ever get to the old games in the series, but I'm also a big sucker for 90s and 2000s hip-hop and rap music. It's literally my jam, dude. I'm not knocking on anyone's music taste, by the way. Of course, this is all subjective. Some people might like the radio stations in the game, but it still doesn't light a candle compared to the older radio stations of the past games. The mix was definitely the best one, man. I get they wanted to make a more serious Saints Row game, but you could have made a spiritual successor to the mix. That would have been cool. Or, hey, you have a 90s old school hip-hop radio station. Why not do a 90s alternative rock and grunge station too? You know, add in on that serious tone you're going for. Seattle is famously known for having edgy and serious music, guys. I mean, come on. Malcolm Kirby Jr. is back to score the game's soundtrack. I like the western vibe it has and how some of the songs in the game matches the gangs themselves, but besides that, it's pretty much more of Malcolm's stuff from the past games. Nothing else to say, really. We steal the Codex, and it's at this point where now the boss decides to give the iconic speech. The speech in the first game may not be the most memorable, but it still laid the ground floor of what the Saints represented. It also makes it more intriguing knowing that not only did you get the speech from Julius, but Julius also technically got the speech from Benjamin King when he was a member of the Vice Kings. The Saints want to make sure the streets are gang-free, and the speech perfectly represents signs of doing whatever it takes to make that happen. The speech in Saints Row 2 is the most iconic. Not only does it have some clever callbacks from Saints Row 1, but the speech mostly represents power and taking control of what you want. The boss can do whatever they want and to let everyone know that the Saints are back in town, trying to take over the city however they can. Saints Row the Third speech isn't great, but I do like the mixture between your speech and Killbane's speech to the Syndicate. In fact, it's mostly just Killbane delivering the speech more than the boss, as all the boss does is just introduce everyone to the new lieutenants. Saints Row 4 is almost similar to Saints Row 1's, but in a more bombastic way. Earth is blown up and it's just your lieutenants. And while you admit that Earth is gone, what you do provoke to everyone is revenge. Getting revenge on Zinniac for destroying Earth and proving that no matter how many times the Saints get knocked out, they still get back up on their feet and keep on fighting. And all of those 4 speeches end with the iconic line,
"It's our time now. Let's get this shit started."
It's our time now. Let's get this shit started.
It's our time now. Let's get this shit started.
It's our time now. Let's get this shit started.
The speech in the reboot, however, to put it as nice and honest as possible, sucks. The more I act harshly about this game, the more I start to feel a little bit of regret about it. The speech is nothing more than getting tired of dealing with the world holding you back and trying to make a name for yourself, and getting tired of assholes bullying people and getting what they want. Boy, ain't that ironic! The message the boss is trying to convey is power, much like with Saints Row 2. But it's so sloppy here because in Saints Row 2, the boss actually had determination and control of the Saints, alongside with trying to gain control of something that they previously owned. Here, it's just someone venting about how they didn't get what they want because life is unfair and all of that bullshit. I would also complain about how they didn't say the iconic closing line, but after hearing this speech, it's not worth it. That and they already wasted it at the beginning of the game. Oh, and to celebrate this, the Saints are planning a party.
Party!
But Marshall over here has something else in mind. Because of the fact you signed a non-compete clause when joining Marshall, the company now officially owns the Saints after you attack Marshall interests. This results in this very uncomfortable moment.
You are aware that didn't solve the issue, right?
Yeah, but he was being a dick.
The Saints roll out to fight off against Marshall, but Eli suggests to handle things legally, which the boss doesn't like. This actually leads to a moment where Eli and the boss kind of have an argument, and dare I say, conflict between the two friends since the beginning of the damn game. Don't get excited, much like with everything else, this leads nowhere. Especially due to the fact that we only have a couple of more missions left. You reach Atticus's office but find out that Atticus isn't here. Instead, Myra Starr is. Yeah, remember her? Myra offers you a deal to get rid of Atticus from Marshall to appoint her as the new owner. This is the only part of the game, by the way, where you make a choice to either fire Atticus or fire Atticus. But it doesn't matter what you pick, the result ends the same. You own the Saints, and Myra Starr is in charge of Marshall now, which means that all we have left is to throw that party. Before I get to the final part of the game, which, by the way, first time I played it, I didn't even know it was the final mission, I just want to collect yourselves for what you have just witnessed in this video. I had a lot of problems with the story up until now. I talked about how the gangs didn't add anything at all to the plot, how obnoxious the characters are, and how the games just randomly came up with a bunch of random crap just to drag on the story. But what you are about to see might be the worst part of the entire game. Well, one of them. But we'll get to that later. All of these 4 Saints are standing in front of the church collectively remembering the times we've had over the past few months, even though it only felt like, I don't know, 2 weeks or something. Eli, Kev, and Nina go to the party while you stand outside soaking in the moment. From there, the Nawali shows up and starts appreciating the good times he's had with you and your friends, and how you made him feel stronger. But right as you start to tell him to join the party...
Well, let's go.
I cannot live your life if you are still breathing.
The Nawali stabs you right in the stomach and starts to bury you alive. From that we get a dream sequence, or is this a moment where we see our life flashing before our eyes? We see all of the interesting things our friends do. Nina with her car, which makes sense considering how much it meant to her, but then you get Eli's whiteboard and Kevin's waffle iron. Remember that board game we played in that one cutscene not too long ago before we broke out the Nawali? Yeah, we're now in it. And we have to play this game where we collect a bunch of animals for a damn bear. But as we keep on playing, the entire board game becomes a nightmare, and the Nawali starts trash talking us about how much of a shitty human being we are, and how we don't deserve our friends, and how we can't do anything right. This leads to moments where our friends start bringing up past events to remind us of how shitty we are. Eli bringing up how he got shot at the party. Nina bringing up how we didn't kill Sergio, even though that should have been Nina's job since that was the whole main part of the frickin' art! And Kevin, well, nothing. He just says we're not good enough friends. It's nothing but doubting, and the Nawali has taken our friends. Then Snickerdoodle shows up. Before we continue, I just want to bring up something really quick. You probably already noticed how earlier on I put quotations around the word serious. That's because it's not. It might be more realistic and down to earth than Saints Row 3 and 4, sure. But in terms of seriousness, this game fails at delivering that. There's only one point where the game attempted to get serious, and that was with Nina's car getting destroyed. That's really about it. In comparison to something serious, let's take a look at Saints Row 2 again. Listen, this game claims to be taking points from Saints Row 2, so I might as well make the comparison anyway. The whole entire game is nothing but dark and serious moments. The moment where Aisha gets killed. The moment where Mr. Sunshine gets his head cut off. When Shandi gets kidnapped by a veteran child. Carlos's death of the Brotherhood story arc. Hell, the mission where you fight Shogo at Aisha's funeral, and the moment where Johnny beats the shit out of Shogo with his bare hands, punching him through a damn tombstone and burying him alive. That whole entire game had nothing but dark and twisted moments. But it worked. In contrast to the reboot, we got Nina's car and her dead mother. That's it. Kev gets kidnapped, sure, but you rescue him no problem. And even then, there's more comedic moments in that storyline than there are serious moments. You also have the choice between Kevin choosing to align himself with the idols and his friends, and that could have worked had it not been for that stupid audiobook playing during the chase. Eli, well, do you really want to count LARPing as a serious moment? Oh, and this freaking cat too! Then again, it doesn't really matter since I hate these characters to begin with, so why should I care about these moments? Why? You snap back to reality, oops, there goes gravity because the dirt isn't buried on you anymore, and you start receiving voicemails from your friends. They talk about how great the party is, how Antonio's waiting for you for a business deal. Yeah, you guys remember that part, right? Yeah, that part at the beginning of the game? And later, the Nawali goes crazy and starts killing everyone. You drive all the way to where you first meet him, which was the location from the first mission of the game, only to find out it was a trap to kill you. You survive the trap though, and even get the Nawali's real address to where he is located. Oh, and this guy named George gives it to you because I guess he got sick and tired of fighting. All of this is happening while he and your friends are role-playing the cutscene that introduced your friends at the beginning of the game. I swear, this has to be a parody or something. Like, what is happening right now? Are they actually filming a sitcom or something? What is the context here? You make it to your friends and shoot the Nawali's goons before having a final confrontation with him inside a helicopter. We get this weird callback from Saints Row 1, I think.
Have nothing to say in reply?
I'm done talking.
Then we have this one final showdown between the two of us. And from there, the game is finally over. We sit on the roof with our friends, watching the sunset, and then the credits roll. I do not like this game. Oh, but you might be wondering, is there a final mission to the game? Well, yeah, you're right, there is.
If you see a faded sign at the side of the road that says 15 miles to the
Fuck off! My initial reaction to this game when it was announced was excitement. It has been so long since we've last seen a Saints Row game, so I was ecstatic when finding out that Saints Row was coming back after so long. Even if it wasn't the original cast, and even though it was a reboot, I was just happy that it existed after so long. Fast forward 1 year later to the game's release, and that excitement became every other emotion I could think of. Sadness, confusion, anger, bitterness, and even at times hatred, but most of all, disappointment. I have been let down by games before. Hell, I've been let down by any piece of media I can think of. But this was the first time I felt really let down. A game series that truly stuck with me since the 7th generation of gaming. From its inception in 2006 to its wacky, bombastic conclusion in 2013. Saints Row has been a franchise that really meant so much to me. And knowing that the franchise was coming back after so long, only for it to be a smack in the face, no, a stomp to the face, is the worst feeling imaginable. I was able to defend the later Saints Row games, like Saints Row the 3rd and Saints Row 4. I was able to partially defend Get Out of Hell. Heck, I was able to slightly defend Agents of Mayhem. But this one? No. I can't even defend this one. While the game itself is better than how it was back when it was originally launched, I cannot recommend this game unless if you're new to the franchise and want a different take on Saints Row. I guess then by all means, but even then you're probably better off waiting like, I don't know, wait till it goes on sale for like $10 or something, I don't know. There's a lot more I can talk about, like the bugs and glitches that the game had on launch. In fact, it still does as of me making this video. Some of the DLC missions and other things. But honestly, I am so drained out right now. I can't go on any further. This video is long enough as it is, and I do not want this to go on even longer than it already is. Honestly, I think that Volition doesn't want to make a new Saints Row game anymore. And you know what? I'm totally fine with that. Not because of the fact that they hate Saints Row like everyone else thinks they do. If that was the case, then we wouldn't even see a new Saints Row game to begin with. But because of the fact that it's pretty obvious that Volition wants to explore their horizon and do something new. And I'm totally okay with that. What I am not okay with, though, is them putting out a below-average game in a buggy and glitchy mess, and me spending over $100 on it. Give me the clown nose, I definitely deserve that one. Never doing that again, though. But I am hoping that their collaboration with Gearbox will bring them much better chances of putting out a better product. Again, I'm hoping.
Thank you. Thank you. Titan has freed us.
Oh, I wouldn't say free. More like under new management.
Well, whatever future holds for Volition or the Saints Row series as a whole, I wish them the best of luck. Despite the outcome of this game, I still classify myself as a fan of this series. But like with every other franchise, at least one of those games has a dud, and this is that one. As for this retrospective, we're all caught up again, but it's not the end. There's still some other Saints Row stuff to take a look at, but in terms of what the future holds for the next game in the series, if there is going to be one, well, only time will tell. With that said, thank you for joining me on this big, gigantic tirade about how much I do not like this game, and always remember that there is a saint in all of us. Have a good day. Holy shit, a new microphone. I know it took me this long to make this video, but after many months and delays, it is finally here, and I want to say thank you for everyone for waiting patiently for this video, and thank you for watching the video in its entire 1 hour glory, quite possibly the biggest video I've ever made. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to watch some of my other videos on the Tales from the Road retrospective if you want. You can be able to watch it in chronological order. Or if you want to be able to watch some of my non-Saints Row stuff, you can do that as well. I recently made a video on the Bob's Burgers movie. You should totally watch that video and then watch that movie because that movie is great. Last but not least, make sure to hit the subscribe button down below and then hit that little bell icon and get notified whenever I upload a new video. Thank you so much for waiting patiently for this video, and thank you for watching this video as a whole, and I will see you guys next time. Have a good day.